Hello, hello, fellow Rotarians and guests. For those of you I don't know, I'm Cindy Peterson. Glad to have you here today. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me in reciting the four-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do, first, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? Eric S. Erickson, please come up front for today's invocation.
Please bow with me if you choose. Lord, thank you for the gifts that you've bestowed upon us. Give us the wisdom to use them wisely. Give us the discernment to choose wisely and to choose the people whom with we share. Thank you, Lord, for the community that we live in, for the natural beauty, the river that surrounds it, the industry that depends on it, and all of the people who work this land, Lord. We thank you. Thanks for this break in the weather, more spring-like. And thanks for this time together today, Lord. And please bless our conversations and let us leave here knowing more than we came with. We pray in your name. Amen.
If you are here week after week, you have figured out that Cindy just kind of rolls with and changes how we do our welcome most weeks. Certainly want to thank our greeters for the warm welcome that they gave to me and to everyone when they came in this morning. But we do have some guests with us, though we don't have necessarily time to go around and do introductions. I would like to invite our guests to please stand. It's okay. There's more than one of you. Guests, please stand. And we'd love to thank you for being here today. Glad to have you. I will also ask our junior Rotarians to stand. With us, we have Abraham Myers from Washington, and speaking today will be Emily Riddiman from Roosevelt and Naima Musa from Jefferson. Glad to have you with us today. I would like to invite Joel Sylvester forward. He is our membership chair, as you might know, and he has what I think is a pretty cool announcement.
Thank you, President Cindy, fellow Rotarians. I want to give just a couple of updates from the membership committee, and like Cindy said, some exciting things. So I've been up here a couple times kind of talking about some of the things that the membership committee is doing. I want to thank every member of the membership committee. The membership committee consists of Matt Paulson, Olivia Essig, Vicki Stewart, Stephen Williamson, Dan Doyle, and Rick Melmer. We've had some great conversations along with Angie, our executive director, and the past presidents, and really working to find ways to bring new voices to the table. And it's been working. As I look around, guests, many new members. My table in the back, we have Bernie DeWald, who's a 45-year Rotarian, and then Carly and Cindy, who are brand new members. So we kind of have that whole mix as I look around the room. So a few just quick membership updates. We are currently at 337 downtown Rotarians. We started the year at 308. Our membership drive brought in 25 new members. So we still have a couple of months left this year's annual Rotary. So if you guys have any guests, anyone that you think would be a strong member, please continue to bring them in so we can continue to add to those voices. You've heard me update a few times. We don't know exactly where we're going to end up for the year. We started the year as the 22nd largest group in the world. If looking at those past numbers at 337, we'd be right about 16. So Tokyo, Japan would be 3 members ahead of us, and there's 14 million people that live in Tokyo. And San Antonio would be 2 members ahead of us, and there's 4 million people that live in San Antonio. So I like our ratios as far as that goes. But the thing that Cindy had kind of mentioned as we met as a membership committee and met with the executive leadership group, one of the things we really wanted to look at is additional ways to be welcoming and open. And we understand that sometimes the investment, the annual membership dues investment, can be something that can keep members from coming into Rotary. And for those that are thought leaders, for those that are really need to have a voice at the table, we wanted to have something that worked. And there are other large groups, large Rotary groups throughout the world that do have a scholarship program. So working with many of you in this room, we were able to get a scholarship program approved. I'm just going to go through some of the qualifications, but it is up and live on the website. So if you go, you can kind of read through these. But we're basically going to, starting now, everyone in this room and online is aware of a scholarship program that's now available. We will be taking applications from now through June 1st, and then we will go through and identify the most qualified applicants. We're going to start with 5. It's just a number that we thought was going to be relatively easy to control. And I'm just going to kind of talk about some of the things that you'll see on the website. So the goal of Downtown Rotary Scholarship Program is to identify up to 5 new Rotarians each year who are thought leaders with focus on unrepresented communities, who bring positive contributions to Downtown Rotary and find the full cost of membership as a barrier of entry. So again, starting from now until June 1st, we're taking applications. What's basically going to allow to happen is the first year their membership dues will be $150 versus the full $500, and we're waiving the new membership fee. The second year it'll be $300, and then by the third year we're hoping that they will be able to identify enough value in Rotary that they'll come on as a full-time long-term member. So again, there's more information out there online. If you have any questions, certainly ask myself, Angie, Cindy, anybody from the executive group, and we'll have some more information as far as that goes. But if you've got anybody that you've been considering that you think would be a good member, now would be the time to recommend that they apply. They go through the normal application process. At the bottom of the application process, it does give them the opportunity to call out that the scholarship is something they're interested in, and then a couple other questions are answered. So thank you.
Did anybody just kind of catch their breath when Joel said this amazing club has 337 members? Today, Downtown Rotary is the largest it has ever been. So I would like to extend my sincere appreciation to all of you for being a part of this club, staying a part of this club, and inviting others into this club. Joel, you're amazing. It's just a blast to work with you, and your drive is unmatched, and I'm grateful for you, and I am grateful for this opportunity to open the door even wider and bring our new members and our legacy members together. I think there's a powerful synergy that can come from that, and it's just been a pleasure to be a part of that effort. From there, Kayla Etrim. We have not one but 2 junior Rotarians we get to hear from today. April is the last month of junior Rotarians, and we're so glad to have Kayla coordinating it. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Cindy said, we do have 2 awesome students to introduce you to today. And the first up is Emily Riedemann from Roosevelt High School. Emily is involved in Spanish Club, band, National Honor Society, Spanish National Honor Society, Science National Honor Society, Habitat for Humanity, and salsa. She works at Scooter's Coffee and enjoys reading, playing her saxophone, hanging out with her friends, and she plans to attend the University of Minnesota Twin Cities and double major in history and Spanish on the pre-law track with her future occupation as an attorney. So please help me welcome Emily.
Almost 8 years ago, a 10-year-old me picked up the golden, twisty, tube-shaped instrument that was the alto saxophone. Although my parents would have opted for me to play a more dainty instrument like the clarinet or flute, I made the executive decision to choose the instrument that absolutely nobody wanted me to choose. Little did I know that decision would come to define a very important part of my life. Throughout middle school, being a part of the band program was exactly what you think it would be like. It was loud, it was chaotic, and it was probably the most disorganized program I've ever been a part of. By the time I reached my freshman year of high school, band class was my least favorite part of the day. I would spend my mornings dreading the arrival of third period, where I would have to sit with the 10 other alto saxophone players, who were all boys, by the way, and wait for the director to begrudgingly lead our amateur band through daily warm-ups. However, later that year, in March to be exact, I, along with the rest of my classmates, were sent home due to the outbreak of COVID-19. A week of quarantine became a month, and a month became the rest of the school year. I went from seeing my friends and socializing even when I didn't want to nothing. And for the first time in my life, I missed the loudness of my band class. I missed the chaos that I felt each day during third period, listening to other freshmen play Seven Nation Army for the 15th time that day. So, that summer, I decided I would join the Roosevelt Marching Band. Quarantine had changed my perspective on socializing and communication so much that I joined the activity that probably has one of the biggest reputations for being full of the weird kids. I myself was afraid of what I would find once I showed up for my first day of band camp that August, but it didn't matter to me because I was so eager to socialize and to have a sense of community and belonging that didn't exist during quarantine. What I found after that first day was not a group of weird band kids, but a group of extremely hardworking and dedicated people who would do anything to make you feel welcome in their family. And that's exactly what we were, a family. We spent 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, for 5 weeks with each other that summer, memorizing all of our music and drill. I fell in love with the activity and what we stood for after that, because I found exactly what I'd been looking for after quarantine, a sense of community and belonging. I went from dreading my band class every day to it easily becoming my favorite part of the day. Marching band and the rest of the band program taught me so many of the most important lessons I've learned in life. It's taught me the importance of time management, how to compromise, how to be a leader, and how to communicate after the lack thereof for so many months. Now that I'm a senior in high school and my last season of marching band ended almost 6 months ago, I've realized that the most important thing the activity has taught me is what it's like to be passionate about something. There are so many young people my age who have gone their whole lives never feeling passionate about anything other than maybe hanging out with their friends or their favorite video game. So I feel extremely lucky to have found enough passion for an activity that I've been able to do it for the past 8 years and hope to do it for the rest of my life. Furthermore, I've been able to use the passion that I found for band towards other areas of my life, like figuring out what to study in college and what I plan to do with my life. The knowledge and endless memories that band has given me will be with me for the rest of my life. I only wish that I would have begun to see the beauty in band sooner, because I know that 10-year-old me would have been very surprised and even disappointed to see that I'm still playing that golden, twisty, tube-shaped instrument that I chose in spite of my parents all those years ago. Thank you.
As a former weird kid in band, I appreciate your story. We turned out okay. I'm excited for your future, Emily. Okay, next up we have Naima Musa from Jefferson High School. Naima is involved in Student Council, Black Student Union, Women's Empowerment, Best Buddies, Link Crew, powerlifting, which she kind of slid in there. She got first place in state last month in powerlifting. Woo! It's awesome. She's like, it's not that big of a deal. I'm like, yes, it is. Connections, debate, oral interp, National Honor Society, and a student ambassador. Naima still has time to work at a daycare and plans to go to the University of Texas Arlington and major in nursing and minor in business. Please help me welcome Naima.
All right. Hello. So I stand here before you today to talk about my journey in deciding my future career. I started off wanting to become a doctor at a young age. Growing up, I didn't have that father figure in my life. And as I reached the age of curiosity, my mother had told me that my father had died due to an illness when I was 3 months old. And as a little kid would think, I thought, I'm going to find this sickness that killed my father and get rid of it for good. But let's just say that wasn't the case. Although as I moved on, I would be obsessed with Doc McStuffins, to the point that I would run up and down each aisle of the store to make sure I have each new toy collection. I guess I can say I was the reckless child. As I got into elementary school era, I would have my 5th grade ceremony. I remember we have to come up on that stage and say our name and what we'd like to do in the future or a promise we'd make ourselves. And me, myself, I went up on that stage and I made a promise. I said, I am Naima Musa, and I promise to become a doctor to get rid of diseases. Yet again, I did not know what I was getting myself into. But as I navigated my way through middle school, pushing away from the future thought, I came across the same questions that would always haunt me. What do you want to be when you grow up? And as a child, I would always say the same answers, a doctor. My curiosity soon began to build up, and I decided to do research on steps to becoming a doctor. And as a result, 4 years of undergrad, 4 years in medical school, 7 to 10 years in residency programs, so in total, 10 to 14 years of school. Yeah, that's a mouthful. I thought 10 to 14 years of my life, by the time I get my dream job, I'll be old. So I decided to find a shortcut into medical field and came across nursing. After much soul searching, I've came to realization that nursing is my true calling. Of course, there were some obstacles along the way. My parents, for example, were not initially thrilled of my decision in becoming a nurse instead of a doctor. But with a little persuasion and some convincing arguments, they eventually came around and are now proud of my decision. And my dreams and hopes of meeting my McDreamy and McSteamy off of Grey's Anatomy, wishing to live the Meredith life, has came to an end. So to sum it all up, I may have started off wanting to become a doctor, but now I realize that nursing is where my heart truly lies. I'm excited about the opportunities that lay ahead and can't wait to make a difference in the lives of my future patients. So there you have it. I'm going to become a nurse. And while it may not be as glamorous as my childhood dream of being a doctor is, I know that it's the right choice for me. So thank you for listening, and remember, it's never too late to follow your heart and pursue your dreams, even if they take you in a different direction than you originally planned. Thank you.
Well, I would like to thank both of you for that look into your journey. You were both extremely delightful, and we're glad to have you with us here in April. It's now time to invite our panelists and moderator to the stage. As they come up, I will provide a Rotary reminder. May 1st, Rotary on the Road. We're going to the Orpheum Theater. And if you intend to have lunch, you need to order that on our website or in the links that you're seeing in the emails, and those orders need to be put in by April 28th. Ready for a real quick intro?
I think so.
Let's do this.
Am I on?
Today's program is a closer look at the Big Sioux River. We have Travis Entenman, Executive Director of Friends of the Big Sioux River. We have Josh Peterson, Environmental Stormwater Manager for the City of Sioux Falls, and Jay Gilbertson with the East Dakota Development District. They are all sitting down with our President Nominee Kurt Loudenback. Kurt, off you go.
Thank you, President Cindy, and welcome everyone to today's program. It's just a pleasure to see everyone out here today. And we're in the modeling the new chairs. Angie, must have been too many panelists fell asleep in the Big Easy chair, so now we have to sit up prim and proper. Many of you are new within the last year or two or three in downtown Rotary, so I just want to rewind the clock just a little bit and remind everyone of an exercise we went through several years ago called the One Relevant It. And as worldwide polio is being conquered by Rotary efforts for the last 50 years, the local Sioux Falls chapter here in downtown of Rotary was looking for a cause and wanted it to be a local focus. And so we went through a series of focus meetings and lots of listening to the members of downtown Rotary, and over a period of months distilled a lot of great ideas down to really two relevant causes that became the most important concepts out of those meetings. And then, being a democratic enterprise, we took a vote, and the highest vote count went to mentoring, which eventually was married up with the mayor's initiative called Sioux 52, which everyone is aware of. But the second place vote, by a vote of 60% to 40%, was cleaning up the Big Sioux River and giving more attention to that. So we thought it was important to, since that was such a passionate second place relevant as we called it, we thought it was important to continue to focus on those efforts and get a panel in front of you that can talk about that. So today, we have three distinguished gentlemen who are well versed in this subject. Travis Entenman, my nearest here, is the managing director of the Friends of the Big Sioux River and the executive director of the Northern Prairies Land Trust. Sits on the board of supervisors at the Minnehaha Conservation District. He received his bachelor's degree in journalism from South Dakota State University and his master's in environmental law and policy from Vermont Law School. Growing up in South Dakota left Travis with a deep desire to sustain his natural environment. The idea of future generations not having a connection to the natural world imparted a sense of responsibility to leave the land as he found it and to minimize the impacts of human activities. This drives his want to conserve our native prairies and clean our watersheds while educating the community on the importance of leaving the earth better than we found it, not letting the status quo continue just because, and showing what is possible when we care. Travis resides in Sioux Falls with his wife Hannah and two sons. Next over here is Josh Peterson, the Environmental Services Manager for the City of Sioux Falls. Josh was born and raised in Wakanda, South Dakota, went to college at South Dakota State University, graduated with a degree in Civil and Environmental Engineering. He worked for 8 years at the South Dakota Department of Transportation as a lead project engineer and started working for the City of Sioux Falls in 2007. For 14 years, he was the principal engineer for projects and construction and has been the Environmental Services Manager for 2 years now. Jay Gilbertson on the end is the longtime, as he defines it, manager of the East Dakota Water Development District, which is a subunit of a South Dakota state government that deals with a wide range of water resource issues. Current district activities include basin-wide surface water sampling, groundwater protection policy development, environmental outreach, and watershed restoration. Jay has an undergraduate degree from the University of Wisconsin River Falls, which I learned are the Falcons, not the Badgers, and a master's degree from the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities. And he held, in a prior life, prior to becoming part of the East Dakota Water Development District, he worked for the South Dakota Geological Survey. So thank you, gentlemen, for being here today. I'm going to jump right into what I want to hit right out of the gate, which when we think of the Big Sioux River, everybody thinks about a large complex over along the river. So the easy button for all of us is to blame Smithfield for all of the pollution and the woes of the water of the Big Sioux River. But Jay, you pointed out that there are a number of contributors to the river from its 400-mile plus journey from northern South Dakota clear to the Missouri River. So can you just speak to that for a bit?
Certainly. Kind of looking forward to having the armchairs, but there you go. The Big Sioux River, from its headwaters near Summit all the way down to North Sioux City, has some issues. We're a lot better off than the Cuyahoga 50 years, 60 years ago. It won't burn, as far as I know. But over much of its length, what have been assigned by the state is what are called beneficial uses: swimming, limited contact, boating and fishing, fish life propagation, those sorts of things. In almost every instance, every segment is considered impaired, which is to say the water in that particular part of the river is not quite up to snuff. And particularly below Del Rapids, which is where the immersion recreation standard, which is the fancy way to say swimming, it's pretty much not a good idea to go in the water. And if you do, get out, take a shower, and get cleaned up. Now, there are a wide range of sources as to what's causing the problem. Certainly in our largest community like Sioux Falls, there are point sources, pipes that come out of facilities, and certainly the large facility just across the river makes an impact. At the same time, so does, one of the facilities that Josh is involved with, our wastewater plant. And pound for pound, there's more stuff coming out of our wastewater plant than there is coming out of Smithfield by a significant percentage. A lot of the other problems we have up and down the basin are tied to things that aren't as easy to identify, what we call non-point source pollution. Everybody in the room here, if you do a little bit of something bad, no one of you is really a big problem, but collectively, that's a huge issue. And in a largely rural, non-urban-ish basin like the Big Sioux, most of our problems are non-point source. The solutions are incentive-based, and it's going to take some time to address those. And lastly, they're largely tied to agriculture, which is not an indictment of agriculture, but there's nothing else out there. We don't have a Dow Chemical factory on the north side of Brookings. There's just cows and corn. And so not surprisingly, those types of operations are the source of a lot of the impairments that we have to deal with. Again, not an indictment of the industry per se, it's just there's nobody else there. So.
Thank you. Anything to add, Travis or Josh, to that?
No, I just want to hold on the fact that, as Jay said, south of Del Rapids, you don't want to get into the river. So obviously it's polluted or impaired by the time it gets to Sioux Falls. So something to think about.
Thank you. So recently in the news, there was a report that indicated that by and large, South Dakota waters were quite clean in comparison to other parts of the country, with the one major exception. And that is, again, Smithfield, and we're not here to pick on them because they're obviously making an effort to improve that. So Josh, can you talk to that, what they're up to over there and how that might improve the condition of the river?
Yeah, Smithfield is making a real significant investment in their facility. They're totally revamping their wastewater treatment facility. It's going to be probably the most advanced facility in South Dakota. It's a biomembrane reactor, and it's something the city has looked at over the years as an investment as well, but they're going to be the first. And so they've got a new permit with the state that's going to require some significant reductions in what they've been discharging to date, and this is one step for them. And it's an easy button to say that they're the bad actor in town, but they want to be good stewards. They're challenged like most industries that they have to provide a product at a certain price, and so they have to be responsible with what they spend their money on with their facilities. But if you look at the corporate investments that they're making and the planning that they're doing, they are trying to be good stewards, not only in Sioux Falls, but nationwide with all of their facilities. They've got goals for zero landfilling, they've got goals for greenhouse gas reduction, and they've got goals for their water effluent reduction. And so, it's not going to be perfect by any means, but no industry is. But I do feel real confident that they're making serious efforts to try and be a better steward of Sioux Falls.
So Jay, back to you. What kind of compounds would be coming out of a facility like that? And as they go through this mitigation process, going from here to here, what does that look like? Okay,
well, the big compound of interest, and it's what has been part of the recent reports, are nitrates, forms of nitrogen that are in the system. And the effluent that is generated by the plant, or the waste that is generated by the plant, or the effluent that comes into the wastewater plant for the city has got a tremendously high percentage of that nitrogen is in what we call as ammonia. And ammonia is bad. Just go with that. Like fire, ammonia bad. And if the ammonia gets in the water, the fish die right away, and then it's in the newspaper and on TV, and that's a bad thing. And so one of the big things that the wastewater plants do is they get rid of the ammonia. Well, what they do is they turn that nitrogen compound from ammonia into nitrate. Okay, nitrate is not wonderful. It's a fertilizer. I mean, it's good in a lot of ways. It's fertilizer, but it is not nearly as immediately lethal and toxic. And so the effluent coming out of both the city plant and Smithfield right now, both have a tremendous, very high percentages or high volumes of nitrate. It used to be ammonia, now it's nitrate, and it's what's coming into the system. In Smithfield's case, their concentrations were really, really, really high. The drinking water standard for nitrate is 10 parts per million. During much of 2021, I think it was, they were hovering around 200 parts per million. That's not good. Their new permit, or the permit they're working under in the new plant, will bring that down to 50 or below. That's the limit that they're going to have to do. And what they're going to end up having to do is actually get rid of the nitrogen. They can't just turn it into something else. They're going to have to denitrify the waste, and that will be done with little beastie bugs in a reactor, and that chew up the nitrate and release nitrogen gas, which is harmless, and the actual nitrogen load will drop. That's something that they will have to do. The city facility right now isn't at that level of nitrate generation, and so they're off the hook for the time being. But if memory serves, there's a footprint out there somewhere that could handle some of the nitrogen removal.
So just to follow up on that, Josh, as Jay indicated, those of us in the room and our 208,000 neighbors are big contributors to issues with the river. So what's the city doing about it to mitigate those issues going forward?
Yeah, well, I'm sure a lot of you have seen in the news, we're making a significant investment in the water reclamation project right now, about $250 million to expand that. And that is just for capacity-wise for the future growth of Sioux Falls. It's not a elevation of the reduction of our effluent. It's just for capacity. Currently we run between 21 and 35 million gallons a day of wastewater through that plant. And just for the future growth for the next 25 years, we need to get that up to 30 to 57 million gallons per day. So that's a lot of water to treat on a regular basis. Currently with the methods we use, and it'll be similar with the expansion, we remove 99% of the contaminants within that water, which sounds like a lot, but that 1% can be significant to the degradation of the river. We do everything we can as far as sterilizing with the bleach compound and then removing it and then aerating to do as much as we can to get it, but there's definitely some impact that the water reclamation plant has. But it does meet the permits that we have through the state of South Dakota as we're required to do. Once again, we're trying to be good stewards for our citizens as well, and it's a balancing act there. As they say, 99% of the contaminants are removed. It gets significantly more expensive to start tackling that last 1%. I said the expansion project we have right now is $215 million. We've had a placeholder recognizing that at some point the state is going to increase our requirements. And right now that placeholder is $300 million to start tackling that last 1% of contamination. And that does nothing to the capacity of the plant. It's just to tackle that last little bit of contamination. So it just gives you a scale of the costs that go into that and the balancing act that we're always trying to do of provide a cost-effective wastewater system for citizens and also trying to be good stewards of the Big Sioux River as well. And so we work towards it as best we can, but we also recognize we want to make the system affordable for everybody.
Sure. So as a quick follow-up to that, a few years ago, we all remember the big flood conditions that we had and the reports that overloaded the system out there. So can you speak to that at all in terms of what happened and what steps, if any, the city's been able to take to alleviate those issues?
Yes. The flow from the average business and average homes is pretty consistent on a daily basis. You'll get your peaks and flows, and people are showering or washing their clothes. But what really makes an impact on the system is the infiltration of stormwater into the system through leaks in the pipes, through deteriorated pipes, separated joints, manholes that are ajar, things like that. So that's one thing the city's been doing for the last 15 years, has been making really significant investments into the collection system for our stormwater, or for our sanitary sewer system, so that we're removing that infiltration, and so that we have a more consistent flow and the peaks aren't as high. It's a volume issue. It's not a contamination issue for us, and so we need to make sure that the volume coming at us at those storm events is low enough that we don't have to overload the system. And that's what was happening. We're getting too much flow for the lift station, pump stations to be able to take that water and push it to the treatment plant, and so that's where we had to discharge to the river. So with that, anything you as citizens can do is, one thing is to make sure you're not having stormwater get into your floor drains or into your system. We have a program where you can connect your sump pumps in the wintertime so they don't freeze up. Make sure you're getting those taken out when the spring comes, because, like Jay said, one person we can handle. When it's a whole community, that's when it overloads the system.
So you're asking us to text each other when we're going to shower, so we split up?
If you can make that happen, that'd be great.
Thank you. Travis, your passion is Friends of the Big Sioux River. Tell us all about what the Friends of the Big Sioux River is. What is their mission, and what do they do, and how do they influence this conversation?
Yeah, so we are a grassroots nonprofit starting in Sioux Falls, but we're working on being the voice, I guess, of the Big Sioux River and the watershed. So the watershed, starts north of Watertown, goes down to the Missouri River by North Sioux City. It's a landmass about the size of New Jersey. So a lot of land here. And we want to be the advocate. We want to be educating the public on the issues of the Big Sioux River, what we're doing, and really push for change. As these gentlemen said, the river's basically dying by 1,000 cuts, and we need to figure out how to plug the hole. And so we want to essentially bring awareness. I grew up in this area. I went to Brandon, and there's a general apathy around the water quality of the Big Sioux. Everyone knows it's dirty. So what? What are we going to do about it? It's always been that way. Well, it hasn't always been that way, and we want to work to educate folks on how we got here, but what's being done currently and what we need to be doing long term. And being a grassroots nonprofit, being able to kind of maneuver a little bit, we want to showcase partners that are doing the actual work on the ground, but also push local government, state government, bring federal funds to this area to really make the on-the-ground impact.
Good. Yeah. So you mentioned in the earlier comments that don't swim in the river south of Del Rapids, and yet we know that the two largest contributors to effluent in the river are downstream from Del Rapids. So what's coming from north of Del Rapids that we should be concerned about?
Well, as Jay said, primary land use of the Big Sioux River watershed is agricultural uses. That just happens to be the area we live in, so that's primarily the driver of our pollution issues. Now, a lot of this pollution, they're excess nutrients. So like if we eat too much sugar, we're going to have a bad diet. We're not going to feel right. Well, the river just has too much sugar in it, really. And it just compounds and then compounds as it flows down. It's a snowball effect. It starts up north and just keeps rolling down. And this is non-pouring source pollution, so we really, technically don't know where this runoff is coming, but it's coming off of fields, it's coming off of city streets, it's coming off of your yards. Anytime there's a big snow melt, so we just melted 1,000 foot of snow. Anything that was left this fall on the land probably got picked up and is in the river right now, floating down to the Gulf of Mexico. So it's this compound excess nutrients in our water systems. And it's not necessarily going directly into the Big Sioux River, so there's tributaries. So there's Skunk Creek, there's Split Rock Creek, there's lakes and streams all throughout the watershed, and they're all contributing little pieces to the larger issue. If you look on Google Maps, where the river comes into the Missouri River, the Missouri River is nicknamed as the Big Muddy. It's always been a little dirty, not dirty, cloudy. You can clearly see the amount of color change we're putting into the large Missouri River. It looks like we're putting chocolate milk into skim milk. And you can see that load. Another reference, so last year we had 2 derechos come through. All that topsoil just floating in the air. That's essentially what we're putting in our water system. So it's total suspended solids. The reason it looks kind of muddy in a way is our topsoil just floating down the river. So anytime there's large rain events, snow melt, wind, basically we're flushing down the reason we settled this area in the first place, our topsoil. That's why we have such a highly productive agricultural system here is our topsoil. And it's getting in the river, and we're just kind of flushing it down. And it slowly makes its way down to the Missouri River.
So the Missouri River, or the Big Sioux River, you referred to the Big Muddy, it made me think about that, is, it is a mud bottom river, right? So, was it ever clear in history?
Yeah, so when we settled the area, it was, records show, it was 8 feet deep, crystal clear. This whole area used to be tall grass prairie as tall as I am, so I'm 6'4". And it was surrounded that area. And that held the soil in place. There wasn't excess nutrients flowing into the river. So it made for a crystal clear river. When you walk into the river now and you kind of sink in that muck, that's just soil over time that we put there. When we started tilling up the landscape and changed the land use of this area over the last 140 years, that changed the river cycle.
Thank you. Jay, you talked about an initiative called the Big Sioux River Project. Can you tell us what that is and why was it created?
Sure. The Big Sioux, well, here, Amber, why don't you stand back? The Big Sioux River Project, Amber over there, she's one of the staff on that activity.
Thank you,
got
Amber.
the cute little logo. Way to go, Amber. The Big Sioux River Project is an effort in the lower basin. It starts at Esteline, north of Brookings, and goes all the way south, to work with landowners, both in urban and rural settings, to make changes to what they're doing to address the point source issues that are driving a lot of our problems. It's a program that's funded by federal support, state support. The City of Sioux Falls plays a huge role in sort of leveraging we call the clean water SRF dollars. Every time the city gets bigger, they have to build more wastewater collection systems. That frees up some money that we can apply to the watershed. And those funds are used to work with willing landowners on a voluntary basis to make changes in what they are doing that will result both in improvements to their operation, i.e. they'll make more money, but then also improvements for the rest of us who live downstream of that area by keeping nutrients on the fields where they belong. Most of the work has been focused on keeping the poop where the poop belongs, which is not in the river, okay? The problem with the swimming, if you're evaluating whether or not it's appropriate to swim in a water body, certainly a lot of nutrient can turn it green and pea soupy, and nobody wants to go into that. But the real killer, pardon the poor choice of terms, are bacteria in the water, all right? And the lion's share of those bacteria are coming from livestock that are being grazed adjacent, if not in the river itself. It's waste ground that you can't get a combine into, so we'll put the cows out there and they go in the water and they take a drink and then they leave some other stuff behind. And, there's certainly contribution from wildlife in the bacterial load. There's bacteria coming out of the Sioux Falls wastewater plant. There's bacteria coming out of the individual septic systems that are up and down the area. But the lion's share of it's coming from cows because that's what's out there. And so the Big Sioux River project is working with landowners to come up with creative ways to make changes in what they're doing, usually with the incentive of we'll write you a check to support that. And a great deal of that effort, again, is focused on limiting livestock access, creating buffers. And there are a wide range of buffering programs that are available through state and federal local projects like Central Big Sioux, and new are always being thought up because no matter how nice a deal I offer Travis to get his cows out of the river, he may go, yeah, I don't feel like doing it. And unfortunately, we have a bunch of carrots, but we have precious few sticks. And really, nobody wants to be the guy with the stick. I would like to be the guy with the stick, but nobody wants to. Give me a stick, and nobody else wants to be the stick. So Travis knows that he can just kind of hold out until I offer him even more money, which is unfortunate, but that's the way the system works right now. So that's what the Big Sioux project is looking at that. It's one of half a dozen projects across the state, all doing the same kind of thing, working with local sponsors, local landowners, state and federal assistance to try and address these non-point source pollution problems. Throw in the plug for Travis, the Minnehaha Conservation District is the local sponsor of this effort in partnership with 6 other conservation districts in that part of the world, the city, the state, NRCS. East Dakota, we are the employer of record for the staff, and we provide them to Travis's crew under a contract.
So I've heard people talk about, of course, the buffer zones is a major initiative to try to keep surface contamination from getting into the river, but we've all seen the tens of thousands of miles of tile put into the South Dakota earth. And what can be done? I mean, it seems like there's very little, if anything. What is the impact of that, first of all, and is there anything that can be done to remediate that source of contaminants?
We don't regulate tiling in South Dakota. Well, looks over here. There are laws in the books that would allow counties to regulate tiling in South Dakota. A number of counties have tried it. Many have backed away. The law was a great first step. It needed a second and third step to really provide the tools and expertise necessary. And again, sadly, many counties like Minnehaha and Brookings got out of the business because it's just fraught with peril. The lawyer in Travis goes, woohoo, great. The rest of us are a little tough. The nitrate loads in the river, which is the biggest thing coming out of the tile, are still pretty manageable. But when we get below Sioux, and even with the city and Smithfield and what happens here, we don't see a big jump in nitrate concentration in the river. Until you get over below Brandon, where the Minnesota and Iowa tributaries come in, where they've been doing that kind of stuff for a long time, everything jumps. So we can do our worst here in Sioux Falls, and it pales in comparison to all the land use damage that's taking place. And a lot of that is driven by tiling.
Yeah. Travis, you had something to add to that?
Well, I was just going to say, I can't tell you where all the tile is. No one in the state can tell you where the tile is. Maybe, people that put it in the tile maybe will. But, so we have no real way to counteract it. We are behind southwest Minnesota and Iowa in tiling, and we're catching up. And these loads coming from the rock and split rock, that could be happening with Skunk Creek in 10 to 15 years if we continue to tile the way we are. Because there's essentially a tile, you're just moving water off your property to someone else's property. It's not disappearing, it's just going somewhere else. And nitrate specifically has a big tile can exaggerate that, and you can have the clearest looking water in the world, but there could be nitrates in there. You can have water that looks like that and still have high levels of nitrate pollution, and that's not a fun thing.
Thank you. Josh, clean, readily available drinking water is almost a birthright to a lot of us. Yet we hear stories across the country of communities that have been devastated by poor water quality and various issues associated with that. And What role does the Big Sioux play in Sioux Falls water supply and that whole ecosystem?
It's one of the critical sources of drinking water for us. If you've probably all heard of Lewis and Clark drinking water, and that Sioux Falls is one of the communities that are on that. That's been a great resource for us. Prior to that, pretty much 90 to 95% of our drinking water came out of the Big Sioux River. We would collect north of town, treat it at the plant along North Minnesota, and pipe it out to residents. With Lewis and Clark coming on board, they're a very economical resource for us for providing clean drinking water. We've been able to reduce what we pull out of the Big Sioux River. Currently about 2 to 4% of the water you drink comes directly from the Big Sioux. We get about 55% of our water from Lewis and Clark, and we get about 45% from the Big Sioux and from a well field north of town that draws out of the Big Sioux aquifer. And so the water that is being treated in Sioux Falls is generally coming from wells, with a very small portion coming out of the river. That change happened because we've got Lewis and Clark as an abundant supply. As the city continues to grow, though, those numbers are going to change. We're quickly approaching to where the aquifer is coming up on its limits of what we can draw on a daily basis. And as that happens, what we're going to do is try and reserve that capacity for the times of drought. And so as our demand grows and the city grows, we're going to start, once again, drawing more water out of the Big Sioux River. We minimize it as we can today because it's a costly treatment to get that to drinking water standards. But to protect our capacity and the water resources, we're going to increase that as we draw. And so it's definitely a critical part of our drinking water supply and something that's going to play a larger role as the city continues to grow.
Thank you. So, quick follow-up question to you. You know, we talked fairly candidly about the contributions of Smithfield to the affluent load in this Big Sioux River. And we're, I think, all aware that there's another wet industry coming to Sioux Falls in the form of CJ Foods up in Foundation Park. And what are they doing to address potential concerns of a Smithfield times 2?
It's a great question. And we are a very appealing community for these large industrial plants because we have a very affordable utility structure, and the state is very affordable as far as a tax structure. And so we're always getting inquiries of what the city can support. When a business like that's coming in, their two first questions are, can you give me enough drinking water, and can you take my wastewater? And so those are questions we have every time. We will work with those companies to see what their needs are. They have to go through an industrial permitting process for their wastewater, and so we'll look at, what are they producing, how concentrated is it, how much flow is there, is it something that the city can take within our sanitary system? Is it something that's too concentrated where we would ask them to do some pre-treatment first? Is it cost effective for them to be like a Smithfield and do all their own treatment and then discharge without connecting to the system at all? So we'll have all of those questions. We will work with them to make sure it fits for Sioux Falls. We have some authority delegated us to the state to actually push if we feel like they have too much flow or too high of a concentration where we can't take it. We'll say, you need to set up a pre-treatment system, or you need to treat yourself. And so we'll work with them. We'll even work to ask, can you reduce your water usage where you're reducing the amount of waste that you're generating as well. So all those discussions come into play, and if we don't feel it's a good fit for Sioux Falls, we're going to push back. But But we also want to encourage those investments within Sioux Falls because job growth and continued.
The point being, you have some authority in affecting their wastewater handling decisions so that we can feel comforted that you're looking after the rest of us and Travis's group in terms of water recreation. And speaking of which, Travis, you know, your dream is to the Big Sioux River to be a source of recreation for the community. You know, what does someday look like? And will we see it?
Oh, that's a good question. I know there's a lot of work in longevity going on right now, so maybe we'll see it. It took us 140 years to get to this point. It's not going to take us 140 years to fix it, but it's going to take some time. There are really great things happening. There's groups like the Big Sioux River Project, communities, businesses really trying to get in front of this and really make an impact. But quite honestly, it's not enough. I have 2 young kids. I don't know if they'll see a river that they can swim in. If you go to Del Rapids, they still have the public swimming beach infrastructure. If you go to Garrettson, they still have public swimming beach infrastructure there. This used to be the main recreational thing for this community, and I wouldn't say it is now. So I don't know. I'm the cheery, happy guy on the group, I think. Well, we can see it. There are things changing. I often sound pessimistic, but there are good things happening. It's just a matter of pace. We have all the technology we need. We know what to do to fix the river. We just need to do it now. And it all depends on us actually tackling the issue.
So on that note, last question for each of you, if you just take a minute. What can this audience do to affect the health of the Big Sioux River? Jay, we'll start with you down here.
Okay. Well, we talked earlier about giving me some sticks. But I think, and I think it's part of it. I think it's, well, a couple of things. One, we need to continue to look forward. From a drinking water standpoint, you know, the city's not going to run out of water anytime soon. But there's only so much available. And so the next person you bring in, I've talked today, what you expanded the club by 10%, something like that. Okay, well, that extra 10%, they're going to have to bring their own water unless we find additional resources for the community. You know, the well zone won't go dry, but they can only support so many people. And so thinking about new industry, thinking about all the development that everybody wants to see, understand that with that comes the need for water. And if we don't have it, we need to figure out where we're going to get it and how we're going to get it here in time and so forth. And then my other point, coming back to the sticks issue, is we need to get serious about protecting our resources. That, you know, we can't always just turn around and get clean water from somewhere else. We've pretty much reached the end of that. We need to focus on things. That doesn't mean everybody has to get, we're not going to get everybody with the stick, but if the worst guy in town knows he's never going to be bothered, his door will never be darkened, it's pretty hard to get everybody else to do the right thing as well.
Thank you. Josh, what would you add to that?
Well, I don't know how many of you went to the mayor's State of the City address this morning, but he said the word collaboration about 20 times, and this is one of those topics that definitely needs collaboration. We've already started with Friends of the Big Sioux River Project. There's a lot of collaborations that have started. There's more that needs to happen. The city is working on a number of efforts as we're looking forward. We've already started a lot of native prairies in our parks to try and help filter out some of that surface water that's coming towards the river. We've had education programs on pet waste and over-fertilization that people do that if you leave it on the ground, it's going to end up in the river at some point. So just small things you can do as citizens that can help add up to make a bigger impact. But you know, we're starting planning for a Conservation 2.0 for water conservation in the city. We've made some big efforts over the last 10 years. We're looking for what's that next opportunity for conservation. So not only saving what we need to generate for water, but what's going to go down and need to be treated at the wastewater plant. So death by 1,000 cuts, I think, is a very accurate statement. And you know, if everybody has a Band-Aid, 1,000 people can maybe fix those cuts.
What a segue, Travis.
Oh my gosh.
Go ahead.
No, I mean, kind of to both points. I haven't seen otherwise, but regulation, enforcement, and land use changes are really what's going to change the river. Putting regulation in place that help us conserve better, enforcing those rules, and then helping landowners make that transition to more conservation-minded agricultural practices. All that stuff is kind of happening, but it's on the voluntary aspect. I want to give Jay a lot of sticks. I want him to have all the sticks. I want the city to have all the sticks. And I know what state I live in, but we need more sticks. And to the collaboration piece, it is going to take everyone's effort to manage this problem. It can't be a scattered shot approach. If you're doing the right thing, good on you. But if your 5 neighbors aren't doing the right thing, you're not going to fix the overall system. It's a community-wide effort. What's happening in Watertown and Brookings directly impacts what we're doing here, and what we're doing here directly impacts Canton, Sioux City, and quite honestly, the Gulf of Mexico. There's a dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico the size of Rhode Island, so basically nothing is living down there, and that's all due to agricultural runoff. That's just what it is. We need a collective effort to switch that tide. On that happy note.
Well, thank you. Well, we just blew through 40 minutes, and I think we could keep going if we wanted to, but we don't want to, right, Cindy?
I have a question.
Kevin will let one question.
Okay. I'm just curious, with the recent recurrence of people wanting to use eminent domain for certain things, wouldn't it be possible for us to do eminent domain because it is a public issue for the water? And something that would align with our state would be making it something that would be available for people to hunt and fish. So the combination of using hunting and fishing, cleaning up along the river, would serve the state's purposes, provide more tourism, and clean up our water. Is that something that anybody's talked about or looked into?
Not eminent domain, that would be kind of like the nuclear option, I would think.
Right.
But there are programs. So state of South Dakota Game Fish and Parks just recently started the CREP program. It's like CRP enhancement. So a landowner can put their land in CRP, and if they allow walk-in access, hunting and fishing on their property, they get an extra bump. It's another voluntary program, another carrot. And that just started, and that'll be 25,000 acres in the watershed. I know with the Big Sioux River, there's other partners part of that program that put additional resources to it. But again, it's voluntary. We could look at doing more mandatory buffer strip stuff or certain agriculture, no-till, cover crop, agricultural practices, things like that. Keep the soil on the ground before we get to eminent domain.
Well, I wish we had more time, but we're running over by a couple of minutes. Let's give our guest a round of applause. Thank you, guys.
Well, I extend the appreciation to all of you for being here. I'm paraphrasing and probably butchering it, the phrase, when we know more, we can do more, or when we know better, we can do better. And I know I am leaving knowing more, and so thank you for that. Glad to have you all here. Next week, we will have a conversation with Congressman Dusty Johnson. Rotary is adjourned.